I'm Kate Instabuse, and this is Busybody Podcast. Today I'm joined by my wonderful, beautiful friend and also teacher. I'm delighted to have her beaming all the way from Barcelona to us. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Maria Earle, and as I was so lovely introduced, I am in Barcelona on this rainy day. Can you believe it? I'm a Pilates teacher and expat. I lived in New York for many years before moving to Spain. And I am really excited to be having this nice little chat.
And we have to say you're more than a Pilates teacher. You owned a studio in New York City. Then you moved to Barcelona. And you now you own another studio. You're teaching all over the world. You're not just like a Pilates teacher. People are seeking you out.
Well, this is why I need other people to introduce me.
I know.
You're hired. You're hired to introduce me for everything. But yes, I just bought my commercial space. I don't own the whole building now. That would be cool. But I just own the place that the studio is housed, which is very exciting and very new, and much more of a big deal than I ever expected, simply because I had no idea how amazing it was going to feel to be an owner of a piece of property.
That's super exciting. But you are also, you're teaching virtually, you're teaching in person, you teach at studios all over. We'll put your Instagram and etc., your website in our show notes so people can find you.
And you can take class from me online at Pilates Anytime.
Oh yeah, I forgot you're a big Pilates Anytime person. Schmancy.
I don't have very many classes on there because,
I
live far away, but there are a couple on there. They're funny.
Yeah, no, that's super fun. That's like, I've kind of forgotten about Pilates Anytime, and now I'm envious again.
Go check it out. Oh, you also can use, how about this for a plug? You can use my name as a special code to get 30 days free on Pilates.
Oh yeah, look at that. We'll put that in the show notes for everybody.
Put that in the show notes. Yeah. They say my name in Spain, Earle. Maybe you don't have to add that part. Or you can, because it's funny.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I think first, uniquely, that you are also doing so much virtual.
Oh.
And you have like this really interesting practice where you're like teaching all over Europe. You were just in Asia, I think that's so interesting. Kind of how the pandemic has changed your just the way that you operate.
Right.
But also you're an expert.
People still interested in hearing about that?
I think that it's interesting because I think people don't understand, I just feel like there's this stigma when you teach fitness that I think people think you teach like 2 yoga classes a week, basically. I say yoga because also when you teach Pilates, everybody introduces you saying, this is my friend who teaches yoga. And you're like, nope, it's Pilates for the last 18 years, but okay.
Never taught yoga.
Yep. Never. Nope.
And do a lot of yoga classes, like it, but don't teach it.
Totally different practice. Also, you're an expert with Kathy Grant, which I think is just like a topic that should be talked about more, basically. A person more people outside of the refined New York circle should know about. But I think also just because Pilates is always seen as like a really white woman's practice. And here she was, OG, right at the start. It's not like she came into it later.
Yeah, at the start, I don't know. The start's like 1925.
Right.
She came in at...
Joseph was still alive.
Right, he was still alive, and it was the 1950s. And it was 1950s New York City. She was his student. She came to him because she had a knee injury, and it was inhibiting her dance career. She was a professional dancer. And, as with so many of those stories.
Yeah.
She went to Uncle Joe, and Uncle Joe fixed her. And she, continued to study with him and got her dance career back on track, continued performing. But I also think the interesting part of the Pilates history is that she was Carola Trier's assistant for 10 years, which is a long time.
That's a very
I think we sort of forget that, and we focus on, Kathy Grant was a student of Mr. Pilates, and then eventually got, a certificate that was signed by Mr. Pilates saying that she was now a certified, I don't actually know what that certificate says, but that she became certified by him, right? So we know that part, but in between, I think is really interesting, right? So the story that I was told was that Arthur Mitchell, who was the first African-American male dancer to dance for the American Ballet Theater, he was a student of Carola Trier's in her studio. She had a home studio, not very many blocks from Mr. Pilates' studio, as I understand. And she saw a lot of professional dancers. And she was looking for an assistant. And Arthur Mitchell, who knew Kathy from the dance world, knew that Kathy was a student of Mr. Pilates, suggested that maybe Kathy could work for Carola Trier. I don't really know how the story went down, but ends up she becomes Carola Trier's assistant. And it's at Carola Trier's studio that she meets Lolita San Miguel. And it's this incredible story of Kathy and Lolita San Miguel leaving the studio one day and walking down the street, and they're going to part ways. And Kathy says, well, I'm going this way because I am going to have my lesson at Joseph Pilates' studio. And Lolita was like, wait, he's alive? That's the story. Because apparently the way that Kathy told the story was that Carola referred to Mr. Pilates in the past tense as if
that's so funny.
He was no longer. So it was just, I think Lolita just thought that he, was not around, and was quite surprised to find out that he was just a few blocks away. And
talk about the days before internet.
Right. No internet. So then, off they go to go meet Mr. Pilates. And, I don't know how much time it took between, this little realization and actually approaching Mr. Pilates about learning to teach his method. Again, the story that I was told, I can only tell the stories that I was told, Kathy had heard about this program run by the state of New York that helped people do like career transition. Get injured on the job, they need a new career. The story, the way she told it to me was the men who worked the toll booths often suffered from breathing problems.
For sure.
Lung cancer and different things, and had to stop working. And so they had an opportunity to get re-educated in a new job. So somehow this program, this opportunity thing sort of gets back to Kathy somehow. And, these two women, let's just label them as like tenacious ladies who were like, well, we're dancers. We're going to need to career change. Like, can we take advantage of this program somehow through the state of New York? And they did.
Wait, that's how they did it. I had no idea that they literally took part in a government program.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And my understanding is that their certificate is from the state of New York.
Wow.
And that it says that they studied, they did so many observation hours, and Mr. Pilates signed it.
Yeah, I think give us a little background I think people don't understand that. First of all, Joseph Pilates didn't name, this is what I understand, he didn't name Pilates. He used to call it contrology, right?
Right.
And
I think
he wasn't.
On his door, it said something like the art and science of contrology.
Right. And so there wasn't really a certification process the way there is today, because he was still alive, and it was a mentorship basically.
Right. It was old school, and Kathy said to me all the time, she would say, ooh, you were really trained really well. She would say, I wasn't trained the way that you're trained. The certification, whatever, didn't exist the way that it is now. She was always very clear that, they basically went into the studio, sat and observed day in, day out for a gazillion hours.
Wow.
Until they absorbed, and they were dancers, so they were movers. They absorbed choreography like they were eating chocolate pudding.
Right.
That's hilarious. I've never said that before. I would like to absorb information like I was eating chocolate pudding. Nice.
Got a real Roald Dahl kind of vibe to it.
Right. Yeah, I'm like, Anyway.
But I think that's part of the lineage of Pilates that's so deep, and in many ways is a bit lost these days, is that it was really kind of for dancers by dancers in a lot of ways. I mean, my dance teachers talked about going to these basement studios in New York City that no one had heard of Pilates work before. It was something that the dancers did in a very small circle, by word of mouth, by somebody's mentor, by somebody's student. There certainly weren't these studios everywhere and like 22-year-olds getting certified fresh out of whatever. So I think that's a really interesting aspect. It really does have this kind of passed down history for quite a while until it got super popularized fairly recently.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's slightly problematic that, and I might stick my foot in my mouth, but I think that it's a bit problematic that the method as we know it was passed down through the lens of dancers.
Mm-hmm.
I am a dancer. I was attracted to the work because I was a dancer.
Same.
So was Kathy, so was Lolita, so was Ron, so was Romana. Like all the teachers that we know as first generation teachers were all movers of the same ilk.
Right.
So, right. Carola Trier was a performer. She was a contortionist on roller skates. Okay. So she wasn't doing Martha Graham's modern dance like Ron Fletcher was, but it's of the same vibe, let's say.
Yeah.
Right. So when you have a bunch of performers and movers in that, like I said, of that club of movers, I think it's obvious that the work transformed
mm-hmm.
through these lineages, through these people. And, the calisthenics and the like old school workout and the old boys club gym situation, which is how I actually imagine Mr. Pilates studio, you know, is not the studio environment that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think what got passed down to us is this very personalized, this hyper-focused teaching style that is, dare I say, rigid in this idea of what the movement is supposed to be and how we're supposed to teach it, regardless of what kind of school you've been trained at. And I think a lot of that comes out of the dance world.
Absolutely. It's like a ballet bar.
Right. And so when you said earlier this idea that, you know, the Pilates that we know was brought to us by dancers who danced and everything was framed in the dance world, I think it's very different than actually the way that Mr. Pilates in his mind had it framed. I mean, I can't speak for the man, obviously.
Yeah, that's very interesting, though, because when he came to the States, you know, it was just, this is kind of the community that he moved into. That's not where he was coming from. And these are the people that popularized what he was doing. So it's been a humongous influence on his work.
Right. And I mean, I am by no means a historian of Mr. Pilates, but, you know, I've read the books.
And in my perspective, also, he was kind of like a Jack LaLanne character, like very, you know, very much about building muscle and very like you said, kind of the calisthenics, the muscle building, the like, you know,
like the dudes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. You know,
power, strength,
and
kind of that vitality, that like old school, just like,
right.
Get out in the cold, you know, like.
Yeah, the cold shouldn't bother you. You know, you go out, rain, sun, shine, whatever the thing is, snow.
Yeah.
There's pictures of him. Like there's archival pictures of him like working out in the snow.
Yeah. And then he mixed in with all these hypersensitive, super intuitive, aware dancers who want to move slow and intentionally and feel every little thing moving, and, you know, and who are performers. So they want to do it right. They want it to be the best it can be. It's going to have a different focus that way.
And it also has an aesthetic focus.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, this conversation can go in so many different directions.
It can go in so many different ways. I mean, I'm interested also in how, you know, you trained so differently from the way that I trained. Like, you really did have a mentor, and you kind of got to be in that same lineage of having this information passed down, and being in dance environment. And I went through a certification process, which also was all dancers and in New York and all this, but it didn't have that mentor feeling. It was very much like, we're here for this amount of time for you to finish up your certification and all that, and then move on. It's not like I'm still in touch with the women who certified me originally. We were all part of a history, and it is so interesting when you read about these lineages, and then you realize, oh, I fit right in. I'm the same exact demographic. I'm a young dancer trying to make my way in New York. I find these people, I apply myself, and then here I am, and who are the people that come after me and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like I don't know anyone who has had the opportunity to study with somebody who was studying with Mr. Pilates while he was alive, and to have a female mentor, to have a woman of color as a mentor in this field, that just seems extra rare, you know? And I wonder how that affected you, since you were so young. Like, this wasn't a career change for you. You're just like young dancer, like ready to roll. This is what you want to do.
Yeah, no, all of that. Yes, I think, I was extremely fortunate. And I didn't know at the time that the role that she was going to play in my life. I didn't know it consciously. How about we say that? I think I must have on some level, right? I mean, that's why you keep showing up. You keep going to class,
Yeah.
My story is a little bit interesting in that I actually had gone through a teacher training before I met Kathy. So I was in my 20s, and I wanted to be a professional dancer, and I had heard about Pilates, and I had heard that it was something that dancers did.
Let's see.
And that it was going to, help me dance better. And somehow I also knew that, it was going to be a way better job than waiting tables.
Same.
So I was like, I'm going to really be suck at waiting tables. So I need some other kind of skill, and I have zero skills.
It really did have this like mystique, right? It was going to be the answer to all your problems.
Yeah.
Help you dance better. It's going to make you stronger. You won't get injured, and it'll make you money, so you can still do all the things you want to do.
Right. Exactly. And at the time, my family was like, "You want to do what?" And I'm pretty sure my teacher training program was like $1,500 or something. And at the time, it was like, you're going to spend how much money on
right. Right.
And I was like, no, this is going to be the thing. Like, I know it. I know this is the thing that I need to do. And I did the teacher training in Boulder, Colorado, at the Pilates Center. And, I think I was really fortunate. I had teachers who taught me about the lineage. In that Pilates studio at that particular moment in time. There was a woman, her name's Deborah Colway. She studied with Eve Gentry. So that became, that Eve Gentry work was in the sort of everyday workings of the studio. And Kara Reeser was teaching there. She had just come from New York City, and she brought with her the work of Kathy Grant. And so I was introduced to that work. And then the studio was run by two women, the sisters, we just call them the Taylor sisters. And they had studied under Romano. And so there was already this like synergy of different lineages coming together. So, and I know that that's rare, because I know that a lot of people went through teacher training programs and had no idea of who these elders were.
Right.
I just was really fortunate. So I do my teacher training, and I'm all, ready to go take a bite out of the Big Apple and, see if I can become a dancer, a real live dancer, just like Pinocchio wanted to be a real And I knew, obviously, of all the people, I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, I knew when I moved to New York that I wanted to continue studying with Kathy Grant. I could have gone uptown and studied with Romano. But that wasn't my choice. It was clear that I needed to go to 2nd Avenue, downtown, next to Astor Place, and like go to the NYU school dance building and find that lady. I did. And I just started taking lessons from her. And I just never stopped. I just kept going back. I got a job dancing with the company. I would go on tour. I'd come back to New York. I'd go to Kathy. we wouldn't be on tour. I'd be rehearsing. I'd go to Kathy. I always taught Pilates. Get back into New York, get back on the schedule, teach Pilates. Then I decided that I was going to open my own studio, and I kept going to see Kathy. I would go to Kathy in the morning, and I would head uptown on the 6 train, and I would teach in the afternoon at my studio. I did that for years and years. It was just what I did. Like, I didn't think about it. It wasn't something like, I'm doing this because, well, there was no because. It was just because I knew that it made my body feel good. And I enjoyed her company, and I enjoyed her stories, and she's the brilliant teacher. And slowly, she just became a very important part of my life, not just as a movement teacher, but as a mentor. And, I would have never said to her face, "You're my mentor." She probably would have laughed at me or something. She would just be like, "No, I'm just your teacher. Like, come to class," But she really had this profound effect on the way that I approach this work and the way that I navigate the industry.
What do you think makes her teaching unique for you? What? Because I feel like it's unique when I take class from you. I can feel that difference. But what do you see in her work that makes it, that kind of drew you?
Okay, well, I could say a few things about what is unique about her approach. The first thing that I would say is that she was extremely creative and playful. And I think, for me, these are really important words in the way that I hope to impart this work to others. We learn best through play and exploration and curiosity. And if we are led by those tenets, I feel like we are embodying so much more richness of movement potential. And so I think she really got that. That was her thing. Also, I would say something that maybe this answers the question, I'm not sure, but one of the things that always surprised me and I was always so impressed with was, she was always questioning and always learning and always being open to new information. She would sit in the back of the room in workshops. She would scribble notes. She would watch like snippets of sports and like get like ideas of like ways to move. She would, she had all these pictures on her wall of, animals moving, and, she would be like, okay, like we need to do this. Mm-hmm. How do we move like this? Okay, no, I have thought of something through my rambles. One of the other things that sets her, I think, apart is this idea of creating sort of inner landscapes, like using imagery, metaphor to teach. So she often would teach through stories. Like set up a whole little scene for you to kind of imagine yourself in.
That's such a beautiful way to get people to really embody stuff. I mean, I think that's such a smart way to really get people turned on to their internal system.
Right. And she just did it. She understood the complexity of, the human mind and spirit and the whole thing, So it was always, she wanted you to really think it through. And sometimes she would say things to me like, when I was like struggling through an exercise, she'd be like, "You're thinking it wrong." Mm. She would see me sort of like prepare. And even in that prep moment of like getting ready, for example, like coming up in your swan, and she'd be like, "No, you're not thinking it right." Mm-hmm. And so you'd have to kind of like rechange the way that you were, your approach. And then, and I think, that is very nuanced.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely beautiful, because I think for so many people, the misperception of any movement practice, if you're playing soccer, if you're doing yoga, if you're doing Pilates, is that the goal is somehow to be able to perfectly replicate things over and over again. But that really is like a deadening of that practice. It's not just that you've executed this again and again. It's like, can you re-inhabit it fresh? Like this body today, with what's happening. And that's also how you avoid injury and things, because as you approach something, instead of just going, "This is how I always do this lunge, this is how I always do this, teaser," you go, "Oh, my hip is a little different today. Oh, my concentration is off today. I'm going to, approach it like this, like that." That's really when you're delving into your practice. I love that she was basically teaching you that right there, especially given when we're first studying Pilates, we're so young, and it is much easier for us to just kind of execute over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you, I'm still unpacking the lessons that I learned from her. Many of the things I just was not ready for. I didn't get it. I did them because she told me to, and I'm a good student, and she was my elder, and I did them. Mm-hmm. Like any, good young dancer with their dance teacher. And it, over the years, as my body's changed, as I've, things have become more challenging, in new ways. Yeah, I fall back on these lessons that are so simple. Mm-hmm. In ways, she had a very special way of helping you drop down into your nervous system in a way that brought you into a place where there was calm and centering, so that then she could build up from there. Mm-hmm. She created all these exercises that we now call the before the hundreds. And, they were basically exercises that she created because she saw that there were sort of gaps or missing links in the Pilates work, that you couldn't just, if you didn't know how to do X, you were really going to not be able to do rolling like a ball into, open leg rocker or boomerang, because you were missing this little element, mm-hmm. right? That isn't necessarily clear. Like if you're just doing hundreds roll up, single leg circle, rolling like a ball, and then all of a sudden you get to this thing and you're like, how come I can't do that? And she was a real genius at being able to pinpoint what that movement skill is that was missing, create an exercise or pull from a whole tool bag of exercises that she had developed over 40 years and say, try this first, do this, see if that sort of gives you the information, the movement skill that you need to be able to be successful over here.
I think that's a place that that's something that I feel like has really been lost in the popularization of all the fitness that's we're really living in a bulk of boutique fitness and all this stuff. There's all kinds of things popping up everywhere. And I think it gives people the idea that you just have to kind of show up and do it. And either you're good at it, quote unquote, or you must be bad at it, like you must be uncoordinated or something.
Or it's not for you. You have to try something else.
Exactly. And I feel like what's lost so often, is very good teachers. And when you experience a teacher who really can see what's going on and say, well, let's take you here and then we'll go back to that. And, suddenly things start to make sense again. I experienced that with Ido Portal when I took that workshop with him, and he had us doing pistol squats, those one-legged squats to the floor. And I'd never done one. And so I was like, I don't think I can do that. And he's showing us this exercise. And I was like, I'm not strong enough for that. So this will be interesting. But then he warmed us up for like 20 minutes. And then he was like, all right, now we're going to do the exercise. And I was like, well, I guess I can try. And just like, whoop, down to the floor and up. And I was like, oh my God, no one's ever prepared me to do them. Of course, I couldn't just do it when I would just stand in the middle of the floor and go, let me see if I can try this. And then just like, can't do that at all, but he prepared us neurologically, our joints, all this stuff. And then it was suddenly available. That blew my mind. I mean, that moment changed a lot of how I teach, because I just realized if you can prepare people, they can do stuff.
They can do stuff. Right. And that for sure is part of Kathy's genius.
How has having her kind of in your ear all these years, because now you are such an accomplished teacher, like you've owned a studio, now you own a studio space again. You've gone from New York to outside Barcelona. You teach all over the world basically now. You're teaching virtually, you're teaching in person. Like how do you see yourself either continuing her lineage or I guess I'm still kind of amazed because I've never had this sort of one teacher that's sort of informing me in that way. What is that? Do you feel like you're kind of carrying something on, or because I guess what I'm also saying is you're teaching in such a different way than she was as well. Like, teaching all of these different kinds of students, teaching online, teaching, what does that feel like?
Yeah. I don't know. I do feel called to share what I've learned from her with other teachers and people, my clients. It's something that I think is tricky. I find it tricky in okay, well, let me back up and let me say it like this. When I studied with Kathy, it was really my time. I was going in there into her studio, taking my sessions, and that was my time for my own exploration. I didn't have an agenda. I wasn't trying to learn her exercises or her technique. I didn't have an agenda in that way. No, I just thought it was going to last forever. Right. And now I want people to know about her, and I want people to know about her work. But the tricky part for me is that, I had the privilege of, day in, day out, week in, week out. Here's another month, here's another year. Right. And we don't live in that kind of world. Right? Like you're not going to move to Barcelona and then come hang out with me and be, be my student for years and years.
Right.
I mean, you could, totally welcome. But the truth is, it's like, people are like, they want a 3-hour workshop.
Right.
Or they want, they want a teacher training in this in your style. And I'm like, I don't know how to deliver that. And there's, I have my colleagues who are doing great jobs at that. Kara Reeser has a training program that she runs. It's an advanced education program for Pilates teachers who want to learn more about Kathy's work. It's, a number of weekends through 4 or 5 months. And Blossom also teaches courses also about, Kathy's work, focusing on that lineage. But it's all packaged in this way, right? Packaged and delivered. Right. And that's what needs to happen so that the work doesn't disappear.
Right.
And I just hope, that when teachers seek me out and are wanting to take a workshop from me or study under me or, mentor under me, that I can, in the time that they have, give them as much of, this essence, this work, I don't know, this, her vibe, so that it can continue to live on.
Well, it's so interesting because it reminds me of this. It's the same struggle that a lot of the older dance studios have. Cunningham, Martha Graham, like, how do you keep these original voices, these original ideas, this energy, really? How do you keep that alive if the actual people that were making it are not alive anymore? You can't just go to the Cunningham studio and see Cunningham around, and you can't even really take class anymore with people who were dancing with him, in the prime. So that then those studios are doing these kinds of, like, we'll have a guest choreographer, we'll kind of make work in the vibe of that, but it always feels a little awkward and clunky, and it is just sad because these are passed down ideas, and
as we know, I mean, it's inevitable, the more that it gets passed down,
exactly. Just kind of dilutes.
It's just kind of dilutes, and important things go missing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for people to conceptualize that if all of this stuff was literally before digitalization, it's not like there's videos of, hours and hours of Kathy Grant just teaching classes, if you and I develop a lineage, there'll be hours and hours of us on video.
I know, that's crazy. To think about, but yeah, the footage that we have of Kathy teaching workshops and whatnot are post creation of Pilates Method Alliance, and the forethought of some people to film those workshops. There's some incredible footage of her in the 70s, but these are snapshots of a 40-year career.
Yeah, I mean, I think about how the only things that we have of Joseph Pilates are just these goofy photos of him, like, standing on his clients and stuff. Like, right. I have no sense of even what it sounded like when he talked, really, Yeah,
I mean, and I think about, back to this, like, snapshot idea, I studied with Kathy in a very particular time in her life. I studied in her last chapter, in the last decade plus of her life, which is very different than studying with her as when she was my age.
Right.
I mean, I think about it and I'm like, oh my God, Kathy was 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 teaching Pilates. And I just met her in her late 70s. Right. And so I only got that. I'm like, all the stuff that came before that, there are some people, we have people who studied with her in the 70s, but we don't know anybody who studied with her at Corollas or
right.
Blah blah blah. So also when we're talking about archives and archival stuff, it's like we're looking at moments in time.
Yeah,
and that's all we got.
Well, I think you do a wonderful job of bringing her forwards in your classes. I feel like I have a sense, at least, of her playfulness and drama, and that's something that I so appreciate in Pilates, in my own teaching. So if I've gotten just like a little blush of her, I feel lucky.
Oh, awesome.
There's so much more to talk about, and also all the things that you do. Do you want to plug all of your offerings?
All of my things?
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. I teach a weekly online class for Pilates teachers. It's called the Advanced Movers Series.
I recommend.
Series. I can say it correctly. Yes, you have taken it. And it's a 6-week nugget of curated classes that we meet online, and we have post-class discussions afterwards.
And people should know you do also a Cadillac version, right? Or a reformer and chair.
You're hilarious that you said the Cadillac, because I don't do a Cadillac, but I've been thinking about it. So you get to choose if you want to do the reformer mover series, the chair mover series, or the mat mover series. And the mat mover series is cool because I do sprinkle in a lot of Kathy Grant's work into those mat classes. So there's that, and that's online. And then I teach a graduate program, which we're about to start up again. I run it. It's an 8-month mentorship program that's kind of hybrid. It's online, and then I really highly recommend that in those 8 months you come to Barcelona and we do these extensive long weekends, and that's real fun.
What a delight!
That's a good thing. I really created that actually out of the Mover series. The Mover series sort of grew out of the pandemic, and then what I realized is that, that's kind of like a short format course, right? And then I was like, I really wanted to do like a long format. So I came up with the graduate program as a long format. And it's a program that I sort of dreamed up because I was speaking to a lot of teachers who would come to me, wanting my advice about their journey as a Pilates teacher, when they had sort of come to this crossroads where they had been teaching for a while and started thinking that they really didn't know as much as they wish they had, or their training program was contemporary, but they were really interested in classical, and basically coming to me saying, should I start another teacher training program? And I, if you've been teaching for 5 or 6 years, like, I wouldn't recommend you start another teacher training program from zero. And I started doing research, and I was like, well, what would you do afterwards? Like, where is
that's brilliant.
The next program? Where's So I was like, well, I'm just going to make it. So it's like a way for teachers to continue learning, but not feeling like they have to start from
zero.
Not
showing you how the reformer works.
Right. They don't need to know that. We need to start talking about how you're teaching, like the pedagogy of the teaching and the decisions that you're making, and what are you looking for, and what are you changing, and why are you making those choices, and what could you do to facilitate a better experience for that person. And out of that through the graduate program.
That sounds fantastic.
And then I travel and I teach at different, I teach at different studios in different places or conferences, and that I love because I love to travel. And I get to do that more now, so that's cool. And yeah.
And you have a book club too.
Oh, and I have a book club. Yes. Book club got a little academic, and then I'm trying to just, pull back and not make it so intense. And now we read books, and I give you 2 months to read them instead of it like looking like a college course. And yeah. That's
fantastic. Well, thank you so much. What a delight.
Oh, well, thank you. This was fun. I was a little nervous.
Don't worry about it. You're a performer. You perform.